Honestly, I step away for a short holiday, and suddenly the biggest pop culture controversy erupts all over the internet. Out of all the films I expected to become a lightning rod for conspiracy theories, political debates, and fan wars intense enough to make the Snyderverse look like a friendly tea party, the last one I would have guessed was James Gunn's Superman. But don't worry, dear viewer, the drinker is back to restore order from chaos, bring balance to a world gone mad, and deliver the final verdict on James Gunn's Superman. And wow, what a weird, frustrating, yet strangely optimistic movie this turned out to be. Let's start with the good. The casting is excellent. David Corset absolutely nails it as Superman. The film doesn't try to tear the character down or deconstruct him for the sake of a filmmaker's nihilistic ego. Instead, it presents him as a flawed but good-hearted man trying to do the right thing in a complicated world. There's a strong theme of heroism and hope, a refreshing lack of political messaging, and some genuinely powerful moments that made me think. Yep, James Gunn actually understands what people want from a Superman film. At its core, the movie's heart is in the right place. And when Gunn steps aside and lets the story breathe, he offers a version of Superman that feels fresh, different, but still timeless. Now for the bad. It's still a James Gunn movie, with all the baggage that comes with that. The plot is a jumbled mess, throwing you into the middle of a story that feels half-told already. The humor, which once worked well in Guardians of the Galaxy, now feels forced, awkward, and painfully out of place. The film is overloaded with too many characters for the script to handle properly, and it relies on a major lore twist that's almost guaranteed to infuriate comic book fans. In the end, James Gunn's Superman is kind of a mess, creative and well-intentioned, yes, but still a mess. It's not great, it's not terrible, it's a flawed movie born from flawed ideas. A perfect example of how assembling a talented cast and crew isn't enough without a solid vision to bring it all together. Just because someone has creative vision doesn't mean the final product will always be great. Anyway, here's a quick rundown of the story so you know what we're dealing with. The film skips the traditional origin story and instead picks up a few years into Superman's career. At this point, he's just prevented a war in Eastern Europe, at least for now, and is currently locked in a losing battle against Ultraman. But surprise, that entire fight was just a diversion, orchestrated by Lex Luthor so he could locate the Fortress of Solitude and steal crucial information to help him defeat Superman. Now, considering what Ultraman eventually turns out to be, Luthor probably didn't even need that extra help, but whatever, let's roll with it. Eventually, Luthor discovers and deciphers a message from Jor-El telling Superman to conquer and subjugate the people of Earth. Naturally, this doesn't go over well when the message leaks to the public. Superman ends up surrendering himself to the US government in an effort to clear his name, only to be handed over to Luthor, who traps him in a pocket universe designed to imprison superpowered beings. Because apparently, creating alternate dimensions is just a casual thing people can do now.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
You sure about that? Oh, absolutely. And if you've been following the leaks, you'll know this is also the part where Lex Luthor has an army of mutated monkeys chained to computers, working 24/7 to spread anti-Superman hate on social media. Yes, really. That's actually a thing that happens in the movie.
Right.
Right. Honestly, a couple dozen guys in an office in India could have pulled off the same operation with way less effort. But hey, what can I say? It's James Gunn's Superman, by James Gunn. Also, you'd think that having the power to create entire universes would make fighting one guy over a tiny piece of one planet seem kind of pointless. But whatever, don't think about it too hard. Anyway, with Superman out of the picture, it's up to Lois Lane to team up with the Justice Gang. And yes, that's actually a thing in this movie, to clear his name and find a way to bring him back before Lex Luthor's master plan destroys the entire planet.
You are now a life member of the Groovy Gang.
But to clear his name and find a way to rescue him, so he can stop Lex Luthor and his dastardly plans before they rip the entire planet apart.
Groovy!
Now, you probably don't need me to tell you that there was a massive amount of expectation riding on this movie. Not only did it need to prove that James Gunn was the right choice to lead the DC universe, but it also had to successfully reboot Superman, launch an entirely new cinematic universe, and, somehow, single-handedly save the future of superhero films. Because let's be real, something tells me Fantastic Four isn't going to be the one to do that was a tall order from the start, and honestly, I'm not convinced this movie manages to pull off any of that, let alone all of it. But like I said earlier, it's not all doom and gloom. There are definitely some positives here. David Corset was a strong pick for Superman, earnest, sincere, and absolutely looks the part. He has solid chemistry with Rachel Bresnahan as Lois Lane. And credit where it's due. In the hands of a lesser writer, a modern-day Lois could have easily come off as a smug, abrasive girl boss. But she doesn't. She challenges Clark's ideals from time to time, but it always feels grounded, like it comes from a place of care, not condescension. Krypto the Super Dog. Mixed reactions from the trailers. Some fans loved him, others rolled their eyes, but honestly, he's barely a presence in the film. He pops in when the plot needs him and quietly disappears when it doesn't. The Justice Gang, though, that's a weird choice. Outside of Mr. Terrific, they barely do anything beyond fighting a big CGI monster in the background. And that really ticks me off, because Nathan Billion deserves better. Seriously, what a waste. There was also a whole storm of debate around whether this movie was pushing a political agenda, mostly sparked by a poorly phrased Variety interview with James Gunn that got blown out of proportion by online outrage merchants like Mark Molina.
But Agatha is the gayest, gayer and gayer as each episode goes.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
You can practically feel how desperate he is to get the cast to say anything remotely controversial, just to chase clicks and retweets.
Superman is an immigrant story, that it is political. MAGA today was getting a little upset that he called Superman an immigrant. I wanted to get your reaction. Your brother talked about Superman being an immigrant, and now MAGA is already upset that he's called Superman an immigrant. I wanted to get your reaction. You said it's an immigrant story. It's a political movie. MAGA today is going nuts. What do you have to say to MAGA?
Seriously, guys, if you haven't figured it out by now, entertainment journalists are not your friends, and they never have been. But putting all that aside, I'm happy to report that James Gunn's Superman absolutely isn't a political movie. It's not here to lecture you, and it's not trying to make some grand statement about modern-day issues. As Nathan Billion puts it,
it's just a movie, guys.
The real problem here is that it's just not a particularly good Superman movie, and a lot of that comes down to James Gunn himself. Honestly, it's probably time people stop treating this guy like some cinematic messiah sent to save Hollywood. His recent track record has been, at best, inconsistent. Yes, he's talented at what he does, but what he does only works within a very specific creative comfort zone. The moment he's forced too far outside of that, he starts to feel lost and uninspired. You get the sense he would have much rather made a Justice Gang movie instead, because that would have let him lean into all his favorite tropes, a ragtag group of quirky misfits who have to band together to take down a bigger threat. That's his bread and butter. But this project had too much riding on it for Gunn to hand it off to someone else. So instead, we ended up with a Superman movie that weirdly struggles to focus on Superman. Another flaw that's become more noticeable with Gunn's recent work is his sense of humor. When it comes to writing dialogue, he's basically a second-generation disciple of Whedonism. Like Taika Waititi, he understands what made Joss Whedon's banter work in early superhero films, and he can replicate it well enough. But what he lacks is Whedon's restraint. A well-placed bit of humor can elevate a dramatic moment, but too much, at the wrong time, just ruins the tone. And that's exactly what happens here. Every time the movie starts building towards something emotionally powerful, it almost always gets undercut by a clumsy, unfunny joke, like the film is afraid to take itself seriously. Not every movie needs to be Guardians of the Galaxy, James. It's okay to grow as a filmmaker. There's just so much crammed into this film, so many characters that don't get the space they need to breathe, so much over-the-top world-changing tech, so many half-baked subplots, that it eventually becomes exhausting. By the time the credits rolled, I felt tired. It's a film that never really finds its narrative center. It's so eager to introduce new characters and ideas that it ends up stepping all over itself. It doesn't help that the movie feels like we've been dropped into a story halfway through. It's as if there was supposed to be a whole other film before this one, something to properly introduce Superman, Lex Luthor, and the Justice Gang. But instead, they are just thrown in without context, and we're expected to already know who everyone is and why we should care. Sure, most people know who Superman and Lex Luthor are by now, but these aren't just familiar faces. This is supposed to be an entire relaunch of their universe. A fresh take. It should feel epic, important, like the start of something bold. But instead, It feels like the second movie in a trilogy we never got the first part of, or worse, like a generic mid-phase Marvel entry. Just business as usual. Another forgettable, middle-of-the-road superhero flick that just happens to feature Superman. Put all of these problems together, and you're left with a film that feels overshadowed by its own creator. A movie that can't get out of its own way. One that falls short of the impossible expectations that were unfairly stacked on its shoulders. Superhero films have hit a serious crossroads this year. They needed something to put them back on the right track. Marvel's once invincible empire is now collapsing under its own weight. Sony's off doing whatever that is with its leftover IPs. And DC's been rebooted more times than Katy Perry's style, and none of it's stuck. As much as this movie tries, and it does try, I don't think James Gunn's Superman is going to be the thing that turns it all around. Anyway, that's all I've got. You can go now.